Welcome back to episode 12 of the Feel for the Game College Football Podcast. My name is Landon. Wilkes is unfortunately not here with me today to record. He is out of town, as we discussed in last week's episode. So I will be leading the podcast today. You will still get to hear from him in this episode because he was able to record out of town, but we will unfortunately not be able to discuss anything between ourselves tonight. It was a very chaotic and memorable week 6, so let's go ahead and get into the recap. So the first game I'm going to talk about is Miami traveling down to FSU and getting sort of dominant win. I know the score at the end ended up being 28 to 22, but this was a game that Miami thoroughly dominated throughout, building that 28 to 3 lead and then kind of taking their foot off the gas, which that's a concern that I'll talk about a little more in a minute. But this Miami team has looked like the most complete team throughout the year. They've played a very difficult schedule and gotten through it very well. I mean, this win, along with the Notre Dame win, aging well with the way that they've been able to play after their first two tough losses of the year. For Florida State, I think this is still a good team, but they were a little bit overrated from the Alabama game. I think that was more of a result of just a weird week 1 game rather than Florida State actually being better than Alabama. If those two teams played again, I would definitely go with the Tide, but I still believe this is a solid Florida State team. This is definitely a great win for Miami, but this is a Florida State team that's probably borderline top 25. I expect them to be just stick around there for most of this year, probably end up being a 9, maybe 10-game winner in a weaker ACC, but overall, a lot of positives to draw from Miami from this game. A little concerned with Cristobal's coaching towards the end of this game, letting Florida State creep back into this one and have a chance. They almost recovered one of those onside kicks. They had 2 at the end of the game. I think it was the first one that they almost recovered, but they should not have been in that situation. They should have kept their foot on the gas and put Florida State away, but they gave them a chance. They would have held on, but that's something that could end up coming back and biting them later in the year as they get into these hyper competitive games with a lot on the line and likely some playoff games because I do expect them to get there. So the big shock of the week, Penn State falling to UCLA. And my main question after this game is how much worse can this get for the Nittany Lions? When you saw in 2021, people forget they went 7-6 in 2021. It was a tough year for them that year. I believe they started off maybe 4 or 5-0, had a big win against Auburn in the non-conference. People thought they were pretty good, ended up falling apart. I think this Penn State team's a lot better than that one. Obviously, with that one going 7-6, but I mean, as far as the media perception, this team is expected to be a lot better than that one was. But they've got some really tough games. They have to go on the road to Iowa. I know Iowa's not a world beater or anything, but that's a tough place to win at. They obviously play Ohio State still, and they get Indiana. That is at home though. But this is a team that could easily end up going 7-5 or worse if the wheels just really fall off. And if they can lose to UCLA, they can lose to anybody. Obviously, for UCLA, this is a great win. They were 0-4, 2 losses to G5 teams, both of them basically being blowouts. I mean, they lost to New Mexico by 25. UNLV was up 23 to nothing, a point in their game. Really bad team, but not on Saturday. Nico played outstanding. I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Really good showing from him, quieting some of the people that maybe said he was bad. And my take on that is he's a good player, not crazy great or anything. I'm not sure that Tennessee misses him too much, even though he did play really well in this game. It hasn't been bad this year. People have been talking like he's been terrible this year. It's just been the team around him. But anyways, great win for them. I still don't think they're very good. They still probably get 3 wins max. I think a lot of this had to do with Penn State just being crushed after that Oregon game because that was a win that they just had to get. They absolutely had to beat Oregon to achieve their season goals, and then they're not able to. And then they get caught sleeping on the road by a hungry team that fired their coach, looking to get in the win column this year. And they were able to in one of the biggest upsets of this year. It could end up being the biggest upset from this season, but yeah, Penn State. Yikes. I was a little bit skeptical on them this year. I figured that they would lose to Ohio State and then be an early playoff exit, but this team is not going to the playoffs. Like, I'm sorry. They're just not. If they were to win out, that'd be their only chance, but they're not going to beat Ohio State. That's just not going to happen. So, moving on to another disappointing team, from this week. Texas going to Florida and losing 29-21. Arch Manning and this offensive line for Texas were just atrocious. So bad. So terrible. Arch Manning took 6 sacks, I believe. A lot of those were his fault. I think I saw today is it might be like the slowest quarterback to release the ball. Like he takes the most time in the pocket before he does something. I think it was that kind of stat, but he was last in it. This is a guy that just really slow processing. His mechanics are a little sketchy, and the offensive line for Texas that is not home to him at all. Even if the offensive line was solid, I still don't know how good he would perform. But my main takeaway from this one is really just questions about how good these teams really are. Florida, I think they're a solid squad. They just had a tough schedule at first. And when I say solid squad in the SEC, I'm talking about like a 7-6 win team. Texas, I don't really know. I don't really know. I thought this defense was really good, but Florida exposed some weaknesses in it. So Texas, I'm not sure they're going to be tested again in the Red River Shootout this weekend against the Oklahoma team that may or may not have Mateer. Either way, I probably slightly lean Oklahoma just because that defense is so nasty. They're going to feast on Texas. They are going to feast on Arch Manning. But I will be curious to see how the season unfolds for either of these teams. Texas playoffs are going to be almost impossible at this point. They would basically have to win out. I don't think a 9-3 Texas would get in because their schedule is one of the lighter ones in the SEC. For Florida, they sit at 2-3 now. They go to Texas A&M this week, so if they really want to get back into it, that would be a game they would need to win. But that's just my thing. I'm just gonna really watch these teams closely this year, see how they finish, because I'm just really curious to see how that ends up looking for both of these squads. So Vanderbilt traveled to Alabama. They came up short, 30-14. This game was a lot closer than the score indicated. Really, what it came down to was red zone turnovers. I believe Vanderbilt had two, a fumble and an interception from Diego Pavia. The defense played pretty well for Vanderbilt. They held Bama to 23 until that, the last minute, like run up the score touchdown that Bama had to backdoor cover. A lot of people were not happy about that, but I still think this Vanderbilt team is very good. We'll talk about top 25s, or I'll talk about top 25s later. And I actually did not move Vanderbilt at all. I think this is really more just about Alabama being able to take care of business. This defense is really good. Good consistent offense. They ran the ball really good in this game, which is a great sign. Alabama, I feel like is coming into form, but they do have a huge test this weekend, which we'll talk about in the game previews for this upcoming week with them going to Missouri. That's a huge game. Kind of torn on who to pick from that. I'm not sure who I'm going to pick yet, actually. So we'll see who I end up going with. But my main takeaway from this one is really just that both these teams are really good. I know people that didn't watch will see 30-14 and be like, "Oh, Bama dominated." No, Vanderbilt had a great chance to win this game if they didn't turn the ball over those two times. That was really the difference here. So Texas Tech traveled down to Houston and did about what I thought they were going to do. They won this one 35-11. I predicted it to be 31-14, so pretty close there. Houston they just didn't have the offense to keep up, and the Cats to keep up with what Texas Tech's got. Texas Tech, really talented team, and they still had some sloppy moments in this game. And that's been a big thing about Texas Tech in these two challenging games they've had against Utah. They won by 24, and this one they won by 24. They did not play their best in either of these games and still dominated against quality competition. So when this team, or if this team is able to put together a complete performance, they could look really scary. I believe that they're far and away the class of the conference at this point. They do travel to Arizona State. I believe that's next week. That'll be a massive game for the Big 12. So as far as Houston goes, they have a super manageable schedule. I would not be surprised if this team still gets to like 8 wins. I don't think they're great. They had to beat Oregon State in overtime. That's not a good team, but I like what Willie Fritz is doing. I think this will be a decent year for them still. They just ran into a buzzsaw in Texas Tech. Texas Tech's a really, really good football team. So next game up on here, Mississippi State travels down to Texas A&M and falls 31-9. It was a slow, painful bleed in this game as a State fan myself. The injuries on State side just piled up. Several offensive line injuries showed in this game. This didn't affect the game, but Fluff Bothwell got injured toward the end. That's really bad as a State fan. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. I've heard people say that he could be back in like a month or so. Hoping that's the case, but that's gonna suck in the short term with some wins that we really need to get coming up on the schedule. The defense impressed me. It was just the offense for State. We just couldn't keep the ball long enough. We just kept putting our defense on the field, and they got worn down. Our defense is pretty thin too, with injuries, so they just couldn't hold up. We had one touchdown in the game. It was a great touchdown. It was a 44-yard touchdown pass to Brandon Thompson, who we were fortunate enough to have back this week. But other than that, no offense from State. Well, they did have the we did have a field goal drive. We drove all the way down to the 1-yard line, and then false start back to the 6, didn't convert, take the field goal. And that kinda set the tone for how this game was gonna go. But on the A&M side, this is a good football team, really good football team. I do think this is a team that can make it to the playoff this year. Their schedule sets up very favorably, especially with Texas looking extremely vulnerable. So watch out for this team. I would like a little more consistency out of Marcel Reed throwing the football. He did throw an interception in this game that was pretty rough, but this defense is starting to come into form. I had some questions about their defense early in the year, but they've put together two really good performances back to back. I don't know that their defense is great, but it's not terrible. It's not something that's going to hurt this team in big games. So, next game on here, Iowa State travels to Cincinnati and falls 38 to 30. Cincinnati was able to build up a 31 to 7 lead in this game and hold on. They played a really physical football game. I'm sure some of y'all have seen the clip where their running back just trucks a dude. It was crazy. And that's kind of what they did the whole game on the lines of scrimmage. It was very impressive. Iowa State, we predicted them to lose this game last week. Thought they were a little overrated. Most people had them in like the top 15. I'm pretty sure I had them in the 20 somewhere in my ranking. I still think Iowa State's a solid team, but they're flawed. They were never as good as people were ranking them. They were never number 12. They had their win over Kansas State, which aged poorly. They beat Iowa in the Cyhawk game by a field goal, which is how that game goes every year. They did blow out Arizona, but Arizona's not good. Cincinnati has a chance to do something special here. They have four extremely gettable games in a row. I'm actually going to look that up so that I can tell y'all what those games are. So this week they're going to play UCF at home. UCF does not look very good. Then they travel to Oklahoma State. We all know about Oklahoma State. They get Baylor at home. It was no defense. So actually, that's three games. And then they go on the road to Utah. So there's a really great chance that Cincinnati is, what would this be? 4-1, 7-1 heading into a game at Utah. That'd be a huge matchup. And then after that, they get Arizona and BYU at home back to back. Those games are super winnable. And then on the road at TCU. So this is a team that at the end of the year could sneakily be like 9-3. And just nobody saw that coming. We talked about this last week about the possibility of this, and now we're seeing it kind of begin to unfold. The first domino was laid down last week. So watch out for the Bearcats. Watch out for the Bearcats going forward. So the final game we're going to talk about here is Virginia going on the road, proving that it wasn't just a 1 week fluke and beating Louisville in overtime. And that's really my main takeaway from this one is that Virginia is not a fluke. I picked Louisville to win this game. I thought I thought that Virginia was somewhat of a fluke. I did. I did. But I was proven wrong. Now this team, they have a super manageable schedule. I'm actually going to look that one up as well and read it off because it is very, very manageable. It is so easy. It's actually embarrassing how easy this is. So they play Washington State next week. They have a bye week this week. That should be a win. They go to North Carolina. North Carolina is abysmal. Then they go to Cal. Cal is terrible. They host Wake Forest. Wake Forest is not good. They go to Duke. Now that's a tough one. That's a tough one. That's one that they could definitely slip up in. Duke's a solid team that has played much better the past couple weeks. And then they go to Virginia Tech in the final week of the year, obviously. But this team will probably be favored right now to go 10-2, which is crazy. Crazy. And I know they lost to North Carolina State, but that was not a conference game. It was the weird non-conference they scheduled because they wanted to keep the rivalry intact. Still just really strange that they did that and they lost that. NC State's not a good team. So that's one that could hurt their resume if they're trying to make it into the playoffs at large later on, which that's crazy to say, but is a legitimate possibility. But yeah, this is a team that could go 10-2 just as a product of their schedule. I don't think they're particularly great. I think they're also a borderline top 25 team, kind of like what I said Florida State was, and that's how it should be considering how close that game was. But this is a team you could look up at the end of the year and have 10 wins and just Nobody saw that coming. I'm not sure what I predicted them to go this year. I know it wasn't anything near that, but crazy result there. And as for Louisville here, I expected Louisville to take a step forward this year from last season. I believe they went 9-4 last year, but I thought they would be an ACC contender, and they're just not. They really look like the same team as a season ago, maybe even a little bit worse. I was disappointed that they lost this game. They've looked sketchy for several weeks, and it finally bit them here. I actually wanted to see what they went last year. I don't want to just be saying they went 9-3 and be wrong, or 9-4 and be wrong. Yeah, they did go 9-4. 9-4 with a win in the Sun Bowl. Yeah, but they look like the same team as last year, pretty much, which is disappointing. This is a team I thought would really break out. I thought Miller Moss was going to be a dude, but he's just pretty average. So that's my thoughts about Louisville. But Virginia and Cincinnati. Just don't be surprised if those are teams with 9+ wins at the end of the season. So that's my thoughts about this week. And now I'm going to hand it over to Wilkes.
So starting with the Week 6 recap, we had Miami at Florida State. I think that was College Game Day. No, sorry, Vanderbilt, Alabama was College Game Day. Miami FSU was a big game though. Miami's D line and passing game, I think, stood out the most to me. So talked a lot about Ruben Bain. He's been a beast for them on the defensive line. They've gotten a ton of pressure on the quarterback. They were able to pressure Tommy Castellanos pretty much the whole game. They didn't really put up a touchdown on the board, I don't think, until late in the third or early fourth. They looked really, really solid defensively. Passing game for Miami is probably their biggest strength right now. I really like what I'm seeing from Carson Beck. I mean, he had a pretty much flawless game. That one flea flicker touchdown where he threw it to Malachi Tony was an elite throw. Perfect ball placement. He looked really solid in this game. CJ Daniels played really well. He had 2 touchdowns. I think Malachi Tony also had 2 touchdowns. So they look like the primary receiving threats for this team. So if those guys end up getting hurt or banged up, I want to see where they end up going with this offense because for me, I feel like the run game was something they were really missing. They weren't able to close this game out because they couldn't run the ball very effectively. They've got a couple guys. I'd like to see them run the ball a little bit better. Since they don't have a guy at quarterback that can run the ball and be a threat there, those running backs are going to have to pick up some slack so they can close out games. This game was not close, even though the final score indicated it might have been. Miami was up 28-3 late in this game, and they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. And Florida State's not a terrible football team. So despite what the score was, I still believe Florida State's a solid roster with a solid scheme. Um, Miami was able to get up 25 points on that roster. And that, to me alone, was very impressive. And they did close out this game, even though they kind of let Florida State creep back in. But overall impressions from Miami, I thought they looked really good. I still won't move them up in my poll. I have them at 3. I've had them at 3 for several weeks. Don't think I'm going to move them, but they look really good. So if any of the teams above them start to slip down, they'll be my first team to probably move up. Florida State's going to have to find a way to protect Tommy Castellanos against teams like this with a good defensive front. They already have 2 losses on the season right now, so I don't expect them to compete in the postseason. I know a lot of people were really high on them. I think I had them in the top 10 at one point in my poll after they beat Alabama, which I still think is a really good win, so I won't take that away from them. But I think Florida State probably will play more of an upset spoiler team this year than a postseason pusher. So moving on, Penn State at UCLA. I could talk about this game for a long time. Penn State obviously was a heavy favorite in this game. I think they were a 3 touchdown plus favorite. UCLA hadn't led in a game all season. They were 0-4. Nico Emaliava had not really put together a solid performance yet up to this point. Penn State's defense has always been stingy and one of the best defenses in the country, so I don't think anybody expected the outcome that we got with UCLA pretty much scoring on almost all of their drives. I think they scored on the first 5 drives of this game. It was 24-7 at one point, and Penn State kind of made a rally to come back. It was at the Rose Bowl, so this was not at Penn State, and UCLA was somehow able to close this game out despite the fact that they just don't have the roster talent that Penn State does. They had a brand new coaching staff. They just fired their head coach and promoted some guys within to different positions coaching, and they had a brand new play caller in this game, previous quarterback for UCLA, which is really cool to see, and he called a perfect game against a really, really good Penn State defense with a multi-million-dollar defensive coordinator. So I think he said something about after the post game, he didn't even know how to operate his headset This is the first time he's really ever had to practice using one while he's calling plays. So it doesn't really look that good for Penn State. Losing this game was probably one of the worst losses I've seen as long as I can remember. I do think that play calling has possibly held this UCLA team back a little bit, which is evident by the level of play we saw from Nico in the offense. I mean, they were incredible. He looked probably better than he's ever looked in that game, which if you had told me that before this game kicked off, I would have been shocked. But they played really well. Don't have much to say about Penn State. They don't look good. That Oregon loss must have taken a lot more from this team than I thought it did. I don't know how they're going to bounce back from this. It'll be interesting to watch, though. But UCLA could be a spoiler team in the Big Ten moving forward. Hopefully, they can keep up this level of play, and it wasn't just a one-hit wonder for them. Texas at Florida. I thought this game would be close. I think I had Texas winning by around a touchdown or less. Said that special teams was probably going to play a role in this game at some point. I figured Texas would be on the receiving end of a positive special teams play, but Florida was able to block a punt for a safety in this game to take a 19-7 lead, I believe. And I didn't see Texas really being able to mount much of a comeback after that. They had a couple chances too, and they made a push late, but Arch Manning just kept holding on to the ball for way too long, throwing into really sketchy coverages, and he just wasn't finding a lot of open receivers. He had one really good throw to Ryan Wingo, but other than that, I did not think he played very well. If you just look at the box score, you wouldn't think he played the worst, but I don't think he played very well in this game. Partially, I think that has a good bit to do with the offensive line play. They can't protect him very well. Even when they do, it's kind of like with Auburn, how Jackson Arnold will hold on to the football despite the fact that his offensive line is giving him time. He still gets sacked. So that's a quarterback issue and a processing issue. It's not as much an offensive line issue, but Texas can't run the ball either. I think Arch had more carries than most of the running backs on the whole team in that game. Pretty much ineffective running the ball for them. They weren't able to do anything there, and lots of 3-and-outs, lots of sacks, lots of TFLs from Florida, which was really impressive to see their defense continue to be as good as they've been, and then their offense finally stepped up in this game. Um, Dallas Wilson was easily the most impactful player on the field outside of maybe DJ Lagway. Their connection looks really strong. He's been out the whole season dealing with an injury, true freshman, 5-star plus receiver. If they can keep their connection going, Florida will absolutely be in most of the games that they play for the rest of the season. They looked really good in this game. I did not expect their offense to take off out of nowhere like this against a decent Texas defense, but we've learned over the first couple of weeks that teams that return a lot of talent from the previous year does not immediately make them a top 10 team like they were last year. So I think that's pretty telling just looking at Texas and Penn State and Clemson. Like these are all teams that were top five in the beginning of the season, and now most of them are unranked now. Just because you return a bunch of roster talent doesn't mean that you're going to be really good the next year. We're learning that a lot right now. Vanderbilt at Alabama. This game was really interesting early. Vanderbilt got an interception on fourth down off Ty Simpson. It was his first one of the year. And then they followed it up with a big touchdown run on third down, I'm pretty sure. And I think it was like a 50 something yard touchdown from Cedric Alexander. So really good play call. Alabama just went gap sound. A lot of safeties and corners crashed into the wrong gaps and just left a wide open hole for Cedric Alexander to take that one to the house. They played really well late in the game. Bama was able to find a really strong passing offense, and Vanderbilt's corners, to me, was the biggest matchup in this game. I just didn't think they really matched up well against Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams. Ty Simpson picked them apart pretty much the whole game, throwing for over 300-plus yards. He played incredible outside of the interception on fourth down, and Vanderbilt just couldn't keep up. It was close late. I think it was a 9-point game there at the end, so it looked like Vanderbilt was going to cover the point spread, and then Alabama scores a touchdown with about 20 seconds left in the game. So anybody who bet on that game and had Vanderbilt covering, that definitely sucked for bettors. But I thought Alabama was a better team. They controlled the game late, and I like what I'm seeing from them. That's a really good win. Vanderbilt's still a really good football team. Diego Pavia played well. He didn't play his best, though. He had a fumble and interception in this game that I think definitely cost them a chance to be able to win this one in the end. So both teams still look really good to me, but Alabama back-to-back signature wins against ranked teams. So that loss to Florida State is starting to still not make very much sense, given that Florida State has lost 2 games already and Alabama's won 2 ranked games. But I think they might have caught them off guard, or maybe Florida State just was a good mismatch for Alabama early in the season. So watch Alabama. I think they'll still make a really good push to be in the SEC championship come December. Texas Tech at Houston was a good game. I thought this would probably be around where it was. I can't remember what my score prediction was, but I figured Houston would have a tough time scoring points on Texas Tech's defense, and I think they scored 11 points. Texas Tech did struggle on offense in this game for a little bit. Third downs were tough. Houston's defense gave them some issues, but in the end, Texas Tech had way more playmakers. Cameron Dickey, the running back for Texas Tech, took a short check down like 85 yards to the house early in this game, which kind of set the tone for the offense of Texas Tech. And they started to roll later in the game, but that gave them a sizable lead early. And Connor Wegman got injured for Houston. They had to put back in Zion Chris. They didn't really do much on offense after that. I think they had one big play, one breakaway touchdown pass from Zion, but that was pretty much it from Houston. Couldn't really move the ball. Kind of what I expected in this game. Houston's an okay football team, but Texas Tech handled business, so I like what I saw from them. Mississippi State at Texas A&M, so I picked State in this game. I didn't necessarily feel really confident about it, just given that Texas A&M has so much talent. The biggest matchups for me were the defensive line of Texas A&M against Mississippi State's porous offensive line. Mississippi State has struggled with pass protection. Blake Shaven holds onto the ball a little bit too long sometimes, but I think it is more on the pass protection unit. They had a lot of plays drawn open in this game that they could have scored on, and because they didn't have any time, they weren't able to hit the receivers down the field. That showed that it was 7-3 at halftime, I believe. It was like 3-0, and then A&M scored late on a really incredible catch and run from Kevin Concepcion. But I thought that Marcel Reed showed me the things I was expecting to see in the first half. Lots of inaccurate throws. Interception was very poor. The receivers are really doing him some favors, and the offensive line is very solid. So he's going to have to be more accurate. When they start playing teams like next week when they play Florida, he's got to be more accurate. They ended up being the better team with more talent. Home field advantage night game. It just didn't stack up well for State. I thought that State could have played much better offensively if they had more time. Cassius Howell had 3 more sacks in this game. I think he might be leading the SEC in sacks now. He's had multiple 3-sack games this season. He's a beast. No one seems to be able to block him. So A&M overall, I think they're still a top 10 team. Might still be a big follower, though. I feel like they could lose to some of these upcoming teams they got to play, Florida included, now that they've found some offensive life late in the season. Gonna go ahead and move on to Iowa State, Cincinnati. Me and Landon both picked this one pretty well. We had Cincinnati winning by around a touchdown. I figured there would be some points in this game. I like Brennan Sorsby. He's played great football. He showed in this game that he's got even more good football left in him. He had several touchdowns passing and rushing in this game. His touchdown interception ratio plus rushing touchdowns is 17-1 right now. I think he should be getting a little bit of Heisman chatter right now. I doubt they'll finish well enough record wise for him to be anywhere close to going to New York, but he's playing some of the best football I've seen quarterback wise right now in college football. Their rushing offense is really solid. They're averaging like 7 yards a carry in this game. Iowa State couldn't stop them. They iced the game late with a deep touchdown from Brennan Sorsby. It was a really gutsy throw over one safety, one corner, so two defenders. Receiver just outran him. It was like an 80, 85-yard touchdown. So it was really impressive. Iowa State's defense couldn't stop anything. I figured this team probably was a little bit of a paper tiger, just considering the fact that they hadn't played anybody. Kansas State's not really a good football team, even though they're finding some offensive consistency right now. They did blow the game to Baylor, but they were playing well. They beat UCF last week pretty handily. They're still not a great football team, and Iowa State hadn't played anybody. They played Arkansas State close. I just didn't feel good about it, so we both picked Cincinnati. They proved us right. Sorsby played really well. Be watching Cincinnati as they make a run late this season, possibly to be in the Big 12 title mix. Virginia at Louisville. I picked Virginia to win this game. That was my call the dogs pick last week, so finally broke the curse. Hadn't had one of those hit all season. I think I was like 0-5 maybe, but lots of other upset picks that weren't on the call the dogs segment have been really good for us. That one just we couldn't seem to figure out. I had Virginia minus 6.5 against Louisville. Virginia actually got outgained in this game, 383 to 237, but they still won the turnover battle 2-0. Virginia's backfield presence with 5 sacks and 7 TFLs was probably the biggest game changer here, considering that Louisville was throwing the ball all over Virginia. even when it was times where it was obvious passing situation, it seemed like Louisville was finding wide open receivers. Chris Bell went off again and played really well, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. An incredible one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone to clutch up, have a chance for them to go down and win this game late. They did lose in overtime. Virginia punched in a Wildcat rushing touchdown. I figured that if Virginia won this game, Chandler Morris would absolutely go off, but he only had 1 touchdown, I think. Didn't play bad or anything. He just wasn't near as explosive as he was against Florida State. Did not turn the ball over, though. Miller Moss had an ugly interception return for a touchdown that probably cost him this game. So going back to when we previewed this game, I figured that Miller Moss would have several interceptions or key interceptions in this game that would cost them. He's turned the ball over a lot already. That ended up probably being the deal breaker for them in this game. I think that's going to be the Week 6 preview.
Time for our top 25 segment. So I'm going to start off from 25 and go up and go pretty quickly here. At number 25, I have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. That win over Wake Forest really sketching me out because Wake Forest really should have won that game. I did not have them ranked last week, but several teams tumbled out of this poll, so they were able to slip back in. Cincinnati at number 24 after their big win against Iowa State. Nebraska right above them at 23 because they beat Cincinnati in week 1. Florida State still at number 22. I still think this is a good team, and that one over Bama just keeps looking better. Virginia at number 21 because they beat Florida State and got a good win this week. BYU at number 20, undefeated, taking care of business so far. I kind of think they're a paper tiger and due to slip, but they've taken care of business so far, so can't fault them for that. At number 19, I have their rival Utah. Texas Tech's a really good team. Their game against Utah was really close to the fourth quarter and just fell apart. I still think this is a really good football team. At number 18, TCU, their only loss coming to Arizona State by field goal on the road, and they have a couple good wins under their belt. Arizona State at number 17. Solid wins over TCU and Baylor. The tough loss on the road to a good and healthy at the time Mississippi State team. At number 16, I have Michigan. They were sluggish in a game against Wisconsin, but I'm not too concerned. I think I have a pretty good feel about this team, and I think 16 is a pretty fair spot. Number 15, LSU. Don't believe they played this week. Solid team, good defense. Offense has some questions, though. At number 14, Vanderbilt. I'm still impressed with this team. Talked about this a little bit earlier. Uh, I feel like I had a good read on them, so I'm going to leave them at 13. 14. At number 13, I have Missouri. They've taken care of business so far. Huge one against Bama this week that we'll get into a little bit later. Notre Dame at number 12. They've just continued to take care of business ever since their 0-2 start. At number 11, Tennessee. I don't think they play this week. A lot of this is going to be the same as on. Actually, I believe all my 3 through 11 is going to be the same as it was last week because a lot of these teams just didn't play. But I have Tennessee at number 11. Georgia at number 10 because they beat Tennessee. They took care of business against Kentucky. Alabama at number 9 because they beat Georgia. Good one over Vanderbilt at home. At number 8, Ole Miss. They were on bye. At number 7, I have Texas Tech. Great win on the road at Houston in dominant fashion. At number 6, Indiana. I don't think they play either. They didn't play anybody notable if they did. At number 5, Texas A&M coming off solid win against Mississippi State. At number 4, Oklahoma dominated a high school team basically in Kent State. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that about Kent State. They beat a great Kent State squad this week with their backup quarterback. So number 4, very fitting for Oklahoma. At number 3, Oregon. They have I was gonna say great win against Penn State. I still think it's a good win against Penn State. So number 3 for them. Number 2, the defending champions, Ohio State. I dropped them for my number 1 team, which is Miami. And I had to put them at number 1 just because their resume has become so good. I just had to do it. They keep stacking all these great wins, and it's no indictment on Ohio State dropping them. They have a good opportunity to get a solid win this week on the road, but the resume is too good. It's far and away the best in the country, so I think Miami deserves number 1 right now. Moving on to our Call the Dogs segment. I actually do not have a pick this week. I don't like any of the games for this, to be honest. And not gonna lie, I haven't gotten a single game right on Call the Dogs. It's just been cursed. I think Wilkes went over his first 2 weeks too. He did get his last week with Virginia beating Louisville, but I'm just gonna hand this one off to him.
So I'm going to move on to my call of the dogs. I have Arizona State versus Utah. The line is -5.5. Arizona State will be traveling to Utah for a late night game. Kind of feels like a revival of the Pac-12 after dark. So it should be a fun game. It's a big matchup. Utah with one conference loss to Texas Tech. Arizona State only lost to Mississippi State and Starkville. So they are still in the running, front running for Big 12 title contention. This is a big one. I think both these teams have one of the best shots to make it outside of Texas Tech and TCU. I think Arizona State's probably going to win this game, so that's why I picked them. They look more balanced right now overall than Utah has been. I don't like what I saw from Utah late in the game against Texas Tech. They started off slow and then just completely sold out on that game and did not finish well. Texas Tech broke away and ended up finishing in blowout fashion. Game was a little bit closer than it looked at the end, but Texas Tech handled that game. I feel like Arizona State could do kind of the same thing. I feel like Utah probably will move the ball better on Arizona State's defense. They've shown that they give up some explosive plays because of their aggressive play calling and blitzing methods. I figure that Utah will probably score a little bit, but I think that if Sam Levitt's able to be protected and extend plays, Tyson has been heating up. I think he finds Tyson several times in this game, makes a huge impact in the passing game. Raleek Brown is really taken over as the main running back in this offense, even though they spread the wealth. He's been really good. They're really balanced, and when Tyson starts heating up, they play really good football. If they protect Sam Levitt, he extends these plays and finds Tyson. I don't know that Utah will be able to keep up. Utah is efficient and they capitalize on turnovers. They're very complimentary. So I see that if Utah is able to find some key turnovers and maybe limit the ground game a little bit and maybe find a way to cover up Jordan Tyson on some of those deeper pass plays, they could definitely win this game. It will be competitive. I'd probably take Arizona State by a couple points, not too many. It'll be really interesting to see how this game goes.
All right, it's time for our week 7 predictions. I have 12 of the biggest games here, and we're going to go through them, talk briefly about the matchup, and then predict the score. So, Friday night, huge game. USF travels to North Texas. Just a massive G5 matchup. North Texas has looked solid to start the year. They're 5-0. They have their quarterback who never started a game in high school, which is nuts. He's really good. USF, obviously, with the solid wins over Boise State and Florida. I like them in this matchup by a little bit. I feel like North Texas is a little bit of a fraud. I think USF is just the better, more physical team in this matchup, and they will pull this one out 31 to 24. I don't have a ton of trust in this USF offense, though. I don't love it, but I just think North Texas is kind of a faker, unfortunately. And then USF will just flat out be the better team. Ohio State's going to travel to Illinois. There's really not a lot to say about this one. I don't think Illinois is that great. I don't. I think there's a lot to draw from their 63 to 10 loss. I obviously don't think that Indiana is 53 points better than Illinois. That was kind of fluky that it was that bad. I think Illinois just I don't know what happened to them in that game. I don't know what happened to them, but they're not that bad. But against Ohio State, I don't care. It's at home. I don't care where it is. I don't care if this game is being played on Mars. Ohio State is likely going to thoroughly dominate this one. I have them pulling this one out 31 to 13 over the Illini. So this is one that has my complete attention, and I will most definitely be locked into. At the 11 o'clock slate, Alabama travels to Missouri. Oh, man. Missouri is one of the best teams in the entire country at running the football. They have a running back duo that's exceptional, led by Ahmad Hardy. And they have a great running quarterback in Bo Pribula. The last time Bama played a team that was like this, they lost to Florida State. Now, Florida State does not have the backs that Missouri has, but they obviously have a quarterback that can run all around. So this is a really sketchy one for Bama. Really sketchy one for Bama. I do think they'll be a lot more prepared in this one than they were against Florida State. They've continued to look sharper and sharper each week. But Missouri's hungry. They are hungry for a win. This is the biggest game that they've had up there in quite a while. It kind of sucks to get the 11 o'clock slot. Definitely deserved better, but I'm going to slightly lean Alabama. I have to. I can't pick the upset here, but I would not be surprised at all if Missouri pulls this one off. I believe the spread's only like 3 points to Alabama, but the rushing attack that Missouri presents really, really scares me for Alabama. But I don't think Missouri's defense is that great. I don't think it's that great. I don't think Bama is going to have too much of a pushback from Missouri offensively. Not that Bama's going to go light up the scoreboard or anything, but I do think they'll be able to do what they want for the most part. And I do think Missouri will be able to do what they want on the ground for the most part. Not that they're going to go run for 350 on Bama or something like that, but they'll have success on the ground. They will have success on the ground against anybody. But I do like Bama pulling this one out 27-24, despite it being on the road. But again, would not be surprised at all if Missouri pulls off this upset and just shoots into the top 10. So Indiana is traveling out to Oregon, and this is the real test for Indiana. I think this is a really good football team. I actually think they're better than the team last year, even though that might not reflect in their final record because their schedule is tougher this season. But I do like Oregon at home. Oregon's so good. They're really, really good. I think this team potentially is better than last season. I completely honestly don't think these teams are too far apart in terms of how good they are, but it's at Oregon. Long travel for Indiana. I just hope Signetti, if they lose, doesn't use that as an excuse like James Franklin did. But anyways, I like Oregon here. It's at home, crazy environment. I just don't see them losing at home. It would have to be a really, really, really just great team to go in there and win. I mean, even Ohio State last year went in there and lost, and then dominated them in the playoff at a neutral site. So I like Oregon to defend the home turf and win this one, 28-20. Oklahoma versus Texas in the Red River Shootout. This game lost a lot of its luster because of Texas losing to Florida. Even if Oklahoma does not have Mateer, I'll still like them. This defense is just so nasty. So nasty. I just don't see Texas. They just don't have the dudes right now to do much against this offense. They still have a solid defense. It was a little exposed against Florida, but it's still a solid unit. Oklahoma is a team that has been interesting to say the least on offense. The tier's been great, but the run game has been super sketchy. So I like Oklahoma edging this one out 20-17 over Texas with Mateer or not. Maybe if they have Mateer, I would say 28-17 or something, but even with Michael Hawkins in there, I like Oklahoma to win this game. I just don't trust Texas right now. I don't trust that offensive line or Arch Manning or the weapons they have. The whole offense is sketchy, and I don't 100% trust the defense anymore either. So I got to go with Oklahoma here. So our next one, Nebraska travels to Maryland. Maryland coming off an absolute heartbreaking loss to Washington. I believe they led this one 20-3 heading into the fourth quarter. They may have even led it 20-0 at one point. Nebraska's a team that is just known to choke these kind of games, but unfortunately for the Terrapins, I have them losing another heartbreaker this week. I just think Nebraska's flat out the better team. I don't think they're great, but I just don't like Maryland at all. Last week could be a crushing loss that just sends them down a spiral to mediocrity again. And unfortunately for them, I think that's what happens. I have Nebraska snatching this one 24-23, but this would be a very typical Nebraska game to lose. But I also said that about the Cincinnati game early in the season. And it was really Cincinnati that threw that one away. Literally threw it away with Brennan Sorsby throwing that terrible interception when they were super close to field goal range, ready to tie that game up. But anyways, I got Nebraska taking out Maryland by 1 point. Florida is going to go to A&M. A&M coming off the good one over Mississippi State, and then Florida obviously coming off the one over Texas. I like A&M in this one. I just think they're better. It's at home. Another conference game at home for Texas A&M. This is their third in a row. Florida, I think they're a decent team, but I think A&M is a great team. So I want to choose great over decent. I like A&M here. I do think it'll be kind of a defensive slog, similar to that Auburn game. A little more points though. I don't see this one being 16-10, but both teams have solid defenses and both teams have areas of weakness on offense. So I like A&M to pull this one out 24-16 over the Florida Gators. So our next one is Georgia traveling down to Auburn. Auburn just doesn't have the offense to win this game, unfortunately, on paper. Crazy stuff happens at Jordan Hare. Their game is seems to always be close for some reason, but on paper, previewing this game, they just don't have the offense. I do think it'll be a tight one for a lot of it, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to be more the same for Auburn, I believe. I like Georgia to win this one, 27-17. Really similar to these past couple close losses for Auburn. I still think Georgia's a really good football team. They were my preseason pick to win it all. I know people have talked about how this defense really doesn't have standout players, but against Auburn, they really don't need that. They just need a cohesive unit to play well. So I like them to take this one on the road by 10. Michigan traveling to USC. This is really the game I'm most torn on. I still don't know right now who I want to pick in this game. I have the score being 28-27, but I don't know who I want to take. I'm literally thinking right now, like who to pick. I'm not sure. I highlighted USC on here as my pick, but I just don't know. I don't trust them, really. I think I'm going to go with Michigan. My gut says Michigan. My gut has sucked this year, but I'm going to stick with it. Maybe it'll pull through here. I like Michigan 28-27 to beat USC, but would not be surprised if USC pulls this one out, obviously. South Carolina goes to LSU. These are two really similar teams. Really similar teams. These are two teams with good defenses, but just terrible offensive struggles. On the LSU side, they have great receivers. Running backs are all right, and the quarterback struggle. South Carolina side, the receivers have not been great. Offensive line has been pretty mid. Running backs are all right. And I didn't say anything about LSU's offensive line. Their offensive line's been mid also. But go back to South Carolina, they have a good quarterback. Really good quarterback in Lenore Sellers, who has not been talked about at all. He's absolutely fallen out of the public eye because of the team around him just not being great. But two really similar teams, but it's a night game in Baton Rouge. I'm not going to pick against LSU in this one. I think the issues on South Carolina a little bit more glaring. I like the Tigers to grind this one out and win a really tight one, 20-16. But I don't know about LSU. I don't know. This is a team that could easily finish out the year 8-4. I did do a playoff prediction that I was gonna put into this podcast this week, but I unfortunately did not bring that with me, and I re-predicted all the games for all the teams, and I believe I had LSU going 8-4. South Carolina, I'm not sure what I had them going. I think I had them maybe at 6-6, which is so unfortunate. I thought this was going to be a great team coming into the year, but just the receivers, running backs, offensive line. It's the only piece on that offense that's good is Lenore Sellers. If they didn't have Lenore Sellers, they might average like 6 points a game in the SEC. Like, no joke. They just have nobody. I guess they have Nick Harbor, but they don't give him the ball, and he still has stone hands. So I like the Tigers in this one at home, 20-16. BYU goes to Arizona. I actually have Arizona highlighted here as the winner, but kind of second guessing that, thinking more about their loss to Iowa State, the only game that they really played competition in. I think I'm going to flip back to BYU right here, actually. I just really don't trust this Arizona team. And I don't trust BYU that much either. I think they're a fraud. I talked about that in my ranking segment. I had them at number 20 and said that they could probably fall. This could start their descent, but I just don't trust Arizona enough to pick them here. I don't. I did earlier when I highlighted them as the winner, but I just don't. BYU's got a great running back in LJ Martin. He is really the heart and soul of this offense. Thurbat Meyer's been solid at quarterback. He is a true freshman, so that will probably be a problem later in the year, but I do think they eat this one out on the road against Arizona. I just don't think Arizona's good. I just don't think they're very good at all. But I do think it'll be another close one. Another close one. They sneak out 27-24 on the road. So our final game here in the picks is a huge one in the Big 12. Arizona State traveling the Rice Eccles to play Utah. Utah obviously had the crushing loss to Texas Tech where it just snowballed late and got out of hand. Arizona State has quietly been playing some good football. They've been great, really, outside of some red zone struggles. And if they want to win this game, they're going to have to clean that up. They cannot be dilly dallying in the red zone and not punching it in. Really, for that reason, I lean Utah, and also it being at home. Really tough environment. I believe this is the night game. I do have it last here in my picks, and I go through the weekly schedule that is in order of game time. So this should be a night game since it's the last on here. Yeah, it's a 9:15 game here in Central Time Zone. So night game for that one. That's a really tough environment. That place gets nuts. I do really like Arizona State. I actually have more questions about Utah, to be honest, with just the way their offense looked against Texas Tech. But I really do just believe Texas Tech is that good. I think they're going to make a lot of teams look like that. They made Houston look like that as well on the road. But it's at home. The red zone struggles for Arizona State. I think that's going to show up, and that's not just an issue that is going to magically just disappear. Until I see them clean that up, I'm not going to believe that it can just vanish. So I like Utah to win a close one here. I also had this one being 27-24. Utah getting back on track with a big win. I actually have three games on here being 27-24. I had Alabama beating Missouri 27-24. BYU beating Arizona 27-24, and then Utah Arizona State. Arizona State's last two games ended 27-24. I'm pretty sure with their ones over TCU and Baylor. So who's to say it doesn't happen again? There's not going to be a game to preview that we go to this week because Wilkes will not be back in town yet, unfortunately. I was thinking about going to a game this weekend with somebody else possibly, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll be back on the road in week 8. I believe that we are going to go to Auburn versus Missouri at Jordan Hare. Get to go to Jordan Hare for the first time, so that'd be a lot of fun. There's some other big ones past that. We'll probably be at a couple more state games this year. Probably the Texas game. We are going to be at the Egg Bowl because state plays basketball on the same day, and I'm a big state basketball fan, so we'll have to double up there on that day. And I'm gonna hand it off to Wilkes for his Week 7 predictions.
Going to move on to my Week 7 predictions. Let's start with USF at North Texas. This game will be really fun. Very under the radar game. It has playoff implications for both of these teams. North Texas is undefeated. USF's only lost to Miami at Miami. Currently one of the best teams in college football, so not a bad loss to have. Byron Brown's run game is going to be the biggest factor here offensively. Their run game is pretty much non-existent when he doesn't run the ball, so he's going to have to be their sole run game here and extend a lot of plays for them. Passing game's been kind of spotty. He's been a little inaccurate, but he's starting to become more polished as the years have gone by, hitting more big pass plays down the field. So if he finds some of those and is able to run the ball well, they will have a good offensive output. Drew Mestemaker for North Texas continues to probably be one of the more unsung best quarterbacks in college football right now. No turnovers right now for him. He's definitely up there as one of the best quarterbacks in the group of five, if not the best. He's playing really well. His story's really neat. Definitely check that out if you haven't heard about him. But I'm going to take USF 41-38. I just think that at the end of the day, USF's defense is probably just a little better. North Texas's offense is very solid, but USF just seems to have a little bit more talent. Maybe they were able to pull from the Power Four via transfer portal. They're just a stingier defense. They've got better wins. North Texas's 49-point win against Washington State's a really solid win for them, but I just don't think they've played anybody yet to really prove to me that they can compete with teams like USF and actually win. I think it'll be close, though. So I've got USF winning by 3 in a shootout. Moving on, Ohio State at Illinois. Ohio State's defense playing against a spotty Illinois offense. I just don't like the matchup. Luke Altmaier could have a great game. It could be close, but I don't see a scenario where Ohio State's defense gives up more than 24 points to Illinois. And I definitely don't see a scenario where Illinois stops Ohio State offensively. So I think Ohio State rolls. They're able to run the ball. Bo Jackson's been really solid. There are 3 receivers, Cornell Tate, and I think they got one other guy that's really solid. Forgetting his name at the moment. But their receivers have been unstoppable. It doesn't matter who they want to throw to. 3-headed monster's been impossible to guard. Julian Sand's playing really good football right now. I think they roll 47-21. Definitely like Ohio State favorably in this matchup. Next, you got Alabama at Missouri. Bama's defense looks like they're back on track. They've played some really good football. Georgia, they were able to limit them very well in the passing game. They were able to limit Vanderbilt somewhat. They don't look like they're as disruptive as previous Alabama teams, but they kind of seem to have a little bit of a bend, don't break mentality as well, with some key players that can add pressure and make big plays happen. I like Alabama, but I definitely think that Missouri's offense and their balanced system profiles a lot more to FSU than anybody they've played since. So if Alabama can't stop the run, Missouri absolutely could win this game outright. But with the home field advantage and the style of play that they have, I think that's really the only thing that gives them a chance in this game. Overall, I feel like Alabama's going to be the better team. They got the better quarterback. But we've seen Alabama struggle with mobile quarterbacks in the past. Ahmad Hardy is probably one of the best players in college football. So if they can't stop Ahmad Hardy and Bo Pribula from running the ball, it should be a very, very interesting game. If not a long game for Alabama, but I'm confident they'll be able to find a way to limit Bo Pribula, and they'll probably rely on Ahmad Hardy. At some point, I think Alabama keys in on that, stops the run for the most part. They're definitely going to struggle a little bit because that's not a key strength for them. Got Alabama winning 37-29. Last game, I got Indiana at Oregon. This looks like it's going to be the biggest game of the week. It's the number 7 team in the country traveling to the number 3 team. Big Ten title implications. It's just a huge matchup. Probably 2 of the best quarterbacks in college football at the moment. Fernando Mendoza taking on Dante Moore. I think this might be the best quarterback battle in the Big Ten, probably that we'll have all season. Mendoza has a lot of in-game experience. He's been in the league for a while. Dante Moore's talent, to me, just is what sticks out. I think it's going to be experience versus talent in this game. Dante Moore just seems to have a little bit more talent to me. And around him, he also has more talent. I think the receiver production at Oregon is probably going to surpass what Elijah Surratt and company are able to do at Indiana. I just think they got too much depth. If Kenyon Sadiq's healthy and he's there at tight end, that's really hard to stop just with the Swiss Army knife that he can be at times. I like what he brings to the table. The running backs for Oregon, they go so deep in that room. They can just keep putting guys out on the field, and it's like they never subbed out their number one running back. They've just got another guy they can throw in there. I think it'll be really close. Um, Oregon showed that they played really close with Penn State, who may not be as good a football team as we thought. So I'm not going to discredit them. That's a really hard place to play and a really tough team to beat at home at night. But they may have some glaring weaknesses that we haven't seen yet and haven't been exposed. Indiana's the team that can do that. They're very efficient throwing the ball. They run the ball really well at times. They're very balanced. Fernando Mendoza is very accurate, and he's very, very skilled at passing down the field. That's going to be big in this game. If he's able to find throws down the field to Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, they absolutely could win this game. But I like Oregon right now. I think they've got more roster talent and more cohesion as a group. So I'm taking them 27-24. Should be a really fun game. I'm looking forward to it. Got Oklahoma at Texas. I think the biggest one that stands out to me in this game as far as contributors for Oklahoma is, can Michael Hawkins, as the backup, if he ends up being the starter, which is looking more and more likely, impact the run game and find explosive plays. He didn't look the greatest to me against Kent State, which is one of the worst teams in the country right now. They just really didn't move the ball well early in the first half, going into the second half. They weren't able to run the ball. He wasn't really a factor down the field. Just didn't really do too much to me to make me think that they're going to run away with this game. Um, Arch has just got to get the ball out quicker. He has been very slow to release the ball in the pocket. He stands around even when he's got good protection and throws into double coverage consistently. So I haven't liked what I've seen from him a good majority of the time. Their offensive line's been terrible. They cannot pass protect. So even when he has the time to throw, it's just not really there. And he holds onto the ball. So talked about that with Jackson Arnold and Auburn. Same situation there. These quarterbacks' processing speeds are just low right now. They haven't really caught up to having a feel for the speed of the game. And when they catch up, they have the athleticism to be really great. But right now, they just haven't caught up there mentally. So that's where I'm at with Texas. Is offense. Their run game's been terrible. We talked about that. Covering the game when they played against Florida this past week. They couldn't run the ball. They relied too much on Arch's legs, and he would hold on to the ball. Receivers weren't really finding much open grass, and it just didn't really work out for them. I don't think they're going to have much more luck against Oklahoma, who has probably one of the best defenses in college football. So I'm going to take Oklahoma, assuming John Mateer's not playing anyway, 35-27. If John Mateer starts in this game, they should win. I don't know that I would change my score too much because Michael Hawkins is a similar play style, and I don't think that they'll be able to run the ball with their backs just because John Mateer's in the game. So I feel like Oklahoma will win a lot of close games because they can't ice them running the football, but just because of the explosive playmaking of John Mateer, they're probably going to be in absolutely every game that they play in, no matter what the situation is. But I like this team a little bit more than I like Texas right now, so I'm going to take Oklahoma. Moving on, Nebraska at Maryland. Maryland has started to show some promise. They start off 4-0. A lot of people, I think, had their win total below 4. So they've looked really good for the start of the season. I think that the biggest matchup for me is going to be the quarterbacks. Dylan Raiola has been kind of spotty so far this season. He's played well, but this team just hasn't been consistent to me. They didn't play the greatest against Michigan. I don't know that Maryland has the talent to necessarily keep up with Nebraska like Michigan did, but they surprised a lot of people. They got up early on Washington last week, which I thought would be a blowout game, or at least Washington would handle that game, but they didn't. They ended up coming back and beating Maryland at the end of the game. So Maryland choked that one away to be at 5-0 in this matchup, be in a good position in the Big Ten. But regardless, I don't think that they really would have been able to hang on. Their schedule's not very easy. I think Nebraska takes this one. If they find a solid rushing attack in this game, they'll probably end up chewing a lot of clock, possessing the ball, and with the athletes they've got on defense, probably hold Maryland to a few points. I've got it 24-14, Nebraska winning this one. Florida at Texas A&M. My biggest question is if Marcel Reed can hold up against the best defense that he has played all season. Florida has looked really solid, even in their losses defensively. They looked really good against Arch and Texas last week in the Swamp. traveling to Texas A&M and College Station, can they play to that same level and force Marcel Reed to be accurate with the football? I think that that's going to be a struggle for him. I don't know that he will be able to be accurate, but they're going to find their explosive plays. They always do. I don't know that Florida will be able to keep up in the end if it ends up being a shootout. But if they can keep this a low-scoring game and Marcel Reed struggles to find open receivers and be accurate, Florida could take this game outright and have back-to-back upsets against Texas teams, which would really suck for the state of Texas. Their only undefeated team left, it would be North Texas. So they kind of need A&M to win this game. But I think it'll be close. This game's always entertaining. If DJ Lagway and Dallas can continue to be a consistent connection, then this offense will be probably one of the better offenses in the SEC. They've been very poor early in the season. That may have been partially due to the fact that they don't have really good wide receiver production right now. But Dallas Wilson has been out for the past 4 weeks with an injury, true freshman receiver. Now he's back, and he put up over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in his first game ever. So I think he's legit. I think that if DJ Lagway continues to get him the ball and that connection stays consistent, they're going to be really solid. But got to have the passing game. Can't just rely on Jaden Ball in the run game, which he played very well against Texas. I think he'll have an impact against A&M with a porous run defense. I figure this game will be close. I've got A&M winning, though, 34-27. Next game, I got Georgia at Auburn. Jackson Arnold just has to be better for this to be a winnable game. Like we talked about, he holds onto the ball for too long, and they just cannot seem to get him to get rid of the ball, even when he has good protection. And a lot of times that protection ends up falling apart anyways, takes too many sacks. I think he's taken the most sacks in the entire country currently up to this point. I think he had like 20 in the past 3 games, which is insane. Georgia has to be able to move the ball on the ground and pressure the quarterback. Those are the keys to the game for them. If they pressure Jackson Arnold and they run the ball, they'll win the game. I just don't think it could be close if that's the case. But I'm sure Auburn will have some stuff go their way. They played competitively in all their games so far. So I'm going to take Georgia 28-24. You got Michigan at USC with the elite offense of USC playing against a balanced Michigan team. Bryce Underwood finds a rushing attack and passing attack in this game. The question is if USC will be able to stop Michigan from scoring. They haven't really stopped many teams from scoring this year. Despite the fact that they have an elite offense, the defense is still in question for USC. I think Mekhi Lemon is a great receiver. Jaden Mayava has been incredible. They'll probably score some points, but if Michigan starts stopping this offense, I just don't know that USC's defense will hold up in this game. So Michigan's defense against USC's offense probably is the biggest matchup here. If they slow down USC, I feel like Michigan will be able to move the ball and score points. I've got Michigan winning 31-27. Definitely see a scenario, though, where USC could win this game outright. South Carolina at LSU. I think the biggest question is if LSU can stop Dylan Stewart from teeing off on Garrett Nussmeier in this game. LSU's passing offense has been lackluster. The pass protection has been pretty bad. Haven't been able to run the ball. They have been relying on big plays to kind of carry them through some of these games, but they have not really come away with a lot. Not scoring many points. I think they're averaging probably around 25 points a game, maybe a little less. So I'm going to have to see a little more from LSU's offense in this game. If they're able to protect Garrett Nussmeier, they should win. I think that's, other than Lenore Sellers playing good football, that's really the only key to this game for LSU. They are way more talented and they should win. But if Lenore ends up playing like he did against Missouri and they start getting home on Garrett Nussmeier, they could win this game too. But it's at LSU. I'm sure it'll be a night game. It's going to be a tough one for South Carolina. LSU's got to bounce back after a loss to Ole Miss in a bye week. We'll see what they can do there. BYU at Arizona. BYU is starting to show what they can do on offense with Bear Bachmeier. I didn't know that he was going to be near as good as he was, at least for BYU in their scheme, being a freshman, and I hadn't really seen much of him, hadn't seen any film, didn't know that they replaced any talent offensively that would be able to produce at the level that they're at right now. They haven't played really that many good teams yet. So Arizona not really being one of them. Could still have a chance in this game, but their offense is spotty, inconsistent. Noah Fafita has been good at times, but had a couple interceptions against Oklahoma State, poor throws, bad decisions, but they were able to handle that game, just given the fact Oklahoma State is not a good football team. I think that that'll not pay off for them when they end up playing BYU. I think key turnovers from Noah Fafita in the passing game We'll probably lean this game towards BYU by a couple scores. They're consistent. Complementary football from them has been probably the key to their success, being able to run the ball, throw the ball well, and capitalize on turnovers. That's just always what BYU does. I think that'll be what they do again against Arizona in a rivalry game. Moving on, Arizona State at Utah. Already picked this game. Arizona State's run game just has to be a focal point. If Sam Levitt can find Tyson with limited time from the Utah pass rush, they'll probably play really well. But if the Utah pass rush gets home, Utah absolutely has a shot to win this game at home and be one of the leaders for the Big 12 title right now. Devin Dampier needs to find more receiving threats in this game. He needs to find some big run plays. His athleticism has to be used in this offense. If they cannot find receiving threats, they will have a tough time scoring against Arizona
So that'll
State.
do it for episode 12 of the Feel for the Game podcast. We will fortunately have Wilkes back next week to make this podcast feel a little bit more whole. I'm sure the listening experience is going to feel a little bit disconnected with me talking completely separate from him and probably the audio sounding different and all that. But this is just going to be a 1 week issue. So won't have to worry about this again the rest of the season. Super excited for this week. A lot of big games. This is the most games we've previewed in a week, I believe. 12. So possibly a lot of movement in our overall season pick records. I'm actually gonna show y'all that real fast or tell y'all that. Wilkes is 48-18 so far this year in games we've previewed on this show. And I'm a 42-24. I've struggled a little bit compared to him 6 games back. Just a lot of these toss-up games I've been on the wrong side of. But hopefully for myself I can claw back in. Combined we're 90-42, which is around 70% accuracy, I think. So pretty good accuracy there from us. But as I said, super excited for this week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully getting this posted again on Wednesday. Eventually I do want to scoot that up. Possibly try to start recording on Sundays and get these posted on Monday. I feel like that'd be great. Probably help the viewership having this out earlier for y'all. More days to view it before the games start. But that's going to do it for episode 12. See y'all back here next week for episode 13.